and welcome to Sono Calabrese, an Australian Calabrese Cultural Association program in which we have a conversation with members of our community and who tell us a little about their lives and their experiences in Australia. Tonight, we're fortunate to have with us a man who strides two areas. One is the area of music, and he's been a musician and music teacher for a very long period of time. And the other is the area of cooking, and he's been a chef for a very long time as well. Referring to Mr. Gaetano Scalise. Welcome, Gaetano, and thank you for taking the time to speak with us tonight.
Yeah, thank you, Vince. Yeah. Thank you, Sam.
And it's an interesting CV that you have, because you have two main passions, it would appear: music and cooking.
Well, I think it's all together one particular unit. I mean, you're dealing with the art. Music it's a form of art, and cooking really is a form of art. It's not, as well as skill. Yeah. So the two things are basically one, in my view. This is my personal view. Other people might have other ideas about that, yeah. But I know how I think when I'm involved in music, yeah, and in food creation and recipes. So, yeah.
And were you born in Calabria?
I was born in Calabria, yes.
And when did you migrate to Australia?
Well, 1960. So it's a little while ago, 1960. We got here. We came here on the ship Roma, where a lot of migrants those days, they used to be transported from one country to another. And there was another ship which was called the Sydney. So the one that we had was the Roma.
And did your family come out together, or did your father come to Australia first and then?
My father came in 1956. So he came here. He was, they used to call it l'atto di richiamo in those days, where a relative would sponsor them to come to Australia, and they would have to pay their own fare. In his case was my uncle and his sister that were here a few years before. And so he came here, he started working in a mill, which is Quaker factory or Quaker mill in the western suburbs in Sunshine. So he started working there, of course, among Italians. It didn't learn the English language, unfortunately. As we were saying before, in those days, the Italians stuck with the Italians, the Greeks stuck with the Greeks. So, they never sort of ventured out and say, look, I've got to learn the English language here to survive, because they could survive in the little that they had in the way of language.
Sorry,
yeah.
Did you have...
So he worked there for all his life.
Right, in the one job, in the one place.
One job in one particular place, yes.
And do you have siblings?
Yes, I've got two brothers and a sister, a younger sister, a younger brother and an older brother. So I'm the second one.
So was a younger sibling born here, or were you all born?
He was indeed, yes. Yeah, yes.
But the rest of you were born in Calabria.
Yeah, the three of us were born in Calabria.
Other than you, do your other siblings have a passion for music or cooking?
Not really, although I have to say that my brother and sister, my younger brother and sister, I actually taught both of them when they were little, being the older brother. So they both learned, my younger brother learned piano accordion from me. And in fact, he was a member of the orchestra that I was conducting at that time. I'm talking about the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
And my sister classical guitar, so I've been teaching her as well.
And do you have a recollection of life in Calabria before you left?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, very much so. Yeah. Very vivid in my mind.
Yeah. And what did your parents do in Calabria? Were they?
Well, my father, I didn't know too much about my father, because he left when I was probably about 7 years old in 1956. And previous, he was always away from the township, because in those days, post-war, there weren't many jobs around, local jobs, and in those days, the people that there was, there was a form of depression, whatever you call it, or and so they used to travel. They used to go to different countries. In those days, they used to travel to places like Torino, for instance, Switzerland, Austria.
Looking for work, and
yeah, exactly.
So,
and so many
what we would call now itinerant workers. They'd go to Switzerland for a season, then come back, and they'd go to Torino for a few months and come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all right. And how long did your journey take from Calabria to Australia? Yeah.
To be precise, 28 days.
Right. Okay.
That was an amazing experience in itself. I mean, I can tell you a little bit about the emotional side of that.
Yeah.
Being an 11-year-old, had finished primary schooling there in Scalise, Calabria. To actually wake up in the morning and your mum would take you by the hand to say goodbye to all the relatives and friends in that little township there, and to catch a train to go all the way to Reggio Calabria. From there, the train, the wagon, or the car that we got onto in Calabria, which is I'm trying to think of the station there. Near Pianopoli, near Pianopoli. That car went straight into the boat from Reggio Calabria to Messina. And so there we stayed overnight, and then we boarded the ship Roma, and that was an incredible experience. That was really unbelievable, because we didn't know where we were going. It was quite an emotional time.
And did you leave relatives behind in Calabria?
Oh, yes, lots of cousins, aunties. My grandmother was still there, although my grandmother was born in New York in 1904. But then when she was little, apparently her parents took her back to Calabria. So she had her family there. My mother was the oldest of 12. I think they had the 12 children altogether. And soon after we left, she actually went to America herself, because she had the American citizenship. So the idea was to bring all her siblings, all her kids into the States, so they become American citizens. And so I've got lots of relatives in New York, all over America. In fact, if you check on the Scalise, there's it's like a Smith. So we often think, are we related to each other now? Who knows you? I don't know you.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. So your father could have ended up in the United States.
Yes, he could have, but because his sister and brother-in-law came here, in those days they used to go. I remember vividly. They used to migrate either to Argentina, Australia, United States, and England, for that matter. That was a time. There was a particular time that was what was going on. So so when you leave the place, you don't know exactly where you're going.
Well, yeah, it's interesting you mention England, because there was a large contingency of Calabrese in Bedford who went from Calabria to work in the factories in Bedford.
In Bedford, yeah.
Yeah,
and probably mines as well. I think they would have been.
In the mines, but mostly in the factories. And so it's fascinating. And New York, and in terms of your grandmother, because she's done the migration journey twice, hasn't she? Or in reverse, because she was born in the States.
Look, my grandmother was an amazing woman. She was such a strong woman mentally, and she didn't do much work, because she had everyone. She was like the conductor of an orchestra.
She was a good manager.
She was an amazing woman, and very firm, and everyone did what they had to do and showed a lot of respect. But she would designate jobs to all the kids. You do this, you do that, you do this, you do that, because we had farming as well.
Yeah.
So we had goats and pigs and a few sheep. Also, we used to grow wheat, corn, and my grandfather had a large portion of land, a very large portion of land, which was chestnuts. So we grew up in the chestnut environment, you know, where we would pick them and we would smoke them and we would sell them, you know, put them in hashing bags and take them to the city there and sell them in the marketplace. It was unbelievable.
And did your grandmother ever express regret that she'd left the United States, or was she too young when she
No,
left?
she left when she went back to, well, actually she went to Italy, the family in Italy, and then because she had citizenship, obviously took the family to America. They encouraged her because she had a sister as well and a couple of brothers. In fact, one of her sisters, I remember in 1956, she actually came to Calabria. In those days was a very hot day. I remember vividly walking from from the station to her place. It was just an incredible journey. So you can see them all really exhausted and all that. But she actually, this sister, she survived to 103 in the United States.
Lovely, it's a good age.
Yeah, and I did meet her in the earliest when I was a kid. And also I went to America to see her after many years as well. So it was, we've had a great relationship all round with uncles, aunties, and whatever. Yeah.
And when you arrived in Australia, you mentioned that you had an uncle here.
Yes.
Any other relatives?
No, that was the only one that I can think of now. There were friends, not so much relation. They could have been related, but not really close relation.
You've gone from a very large extended family to a relatively small one in comparison.
But that was my father's side, Vince. Yeah. My father's side didn't have many relatives. My mother was the one that had all the relatives and brothers and sisters.
Yeah. And was your mother pleased to be coming to Australia? Do you think?
Look, you know, that's a very good question. I think she felt very sad to be able to leave Calabria, because her mother was still there, her sisters, but she did it for the good of the kids, you know, for us, and also the fact that she had a husband, and the husband had provided, a future for us. Well, tried to give us a future here. Had already bought a house when we came here. He had already put a deposit on the house, and they both ended up working very hard, you know, shift work and all this kind of stuff. In fact, I used to look after most of my brother and my two brothers there. I used to do all the cooking at home and cleaning and stuff like that. So I've always been involved in that kind of stuff. Yeah. But no, it was really quite a sad time and a happy time at the same time. My mother was, you could say, probably depressed for about 4 years. Because I can tell you, if I can briefly just add to that, we got here, we stopped at Port Melbourne, we came off the boat, we went to this place, to this house where, to us, the streets looked the same. We were too scared to actually get out of the house to go for a walk because we didn't know whether we would find our way back because all the houses looked the same. We couldn't speak the language. So that actually had a bit of a problem psychologically to us. And in particular, my mum, we were kids, we took risks kind of thing,
And what about yourself? Did you miss Calabria when you were
I've always had a soft spot for Calabria. Yes, I've been back many times. My two brothers never had the inclination or the interest to go back to where we come from. For one reason or another, they think that this is the place for them, and that's it. They've forgotten that. But I'm a different animal altogether. I'm one of those very passionate. When it comes to music, food, and. In fact, the first time that I went back to Italy after many, many years, I went back to Calabria and I was walking around it with tears because there were smells and things that I recollect. My subconscious opened up there could be a little flower that you remember as a kid. And that was an emotional time, you know. Little marks. As kids, we used to leave little markings, you know, like little knife cuttings on a piece of timber, and you go there, and it's still there. Your autograph for that time was still. So all that was very, very emotional. And my relatives, they couldn't work out why was I so emotional. But I had to actually explain to them that to us was a big thing to live a country where you don't know where you're going, and you're so little. And we knew nothing about Australia. You lose your friends. We didn't know whether we would see each other again. So it was like saying a final goodbye. So it was really quite, you know.
And in Australia, how long did it take you to learn the language?
That took us a little while.
Yeah.
Why, I can explain that to you. My brother and I, we got thrown into a class in primary school in grade 6 at that time. So they I literally say they chucked us in there and survived.
Mm.
So we had no knowledge of English whatsoever. We couldn't ask my father what certain words were because he knew some of the words, but they were distorted words. To give you an example, come on here to him was come on.
Mm.
So we detected that there was a little bit of discrepancy there, even though we were little. So we thought we better make an effort to learn ourselves, and we bought dictionaries and all sorts of things. So being stuck in a classroom for 12 months, not knowing exactly what was going on, you just sit there. The only thing that my brother and I were really good at was math. Anything that went onto the blackboard, we could solve it. And the teacher, you know, was really, but we didn't know what he was saying to us. So to add to that, because we couldn't speak one word of English, he and I used to walk home after school, and we pretend that we speak English. To us, the English language was a lot of S's. It's all SSS. So we would look at each other and say, so that was our way of, you know, communicating, trying to communicate in English, but it was just a made-up thing, you know.
Others have said similar things, and in fact, I think you said that you'd finished primary school in Italy. So in everything other than language, you would have been far advanced.
I think you got a point there. I think the Italian school system, the school system in the primary schooling at that time was 4 hours a day, 8 o'clock in the morning till 12. But I have to say it was solid work. Was really solid. We couldn't work out why we had a recess here. You know, you hear the bell. We didn't understand it. You know, you go out and play, kick a football. Kick a football. Why would you want to kick a football? You know, we weren't brought up that way. We had no football. We were living. We didn't have a campus where kids go out and play. We were hilly place. You know, a little mountain here, a little rock. You know, so it was a different atmosphere, a different environment, completely different. What was the I'm trying to just extend it.
I think you lived, I think you said, in West Footscray.
Yeah. So in Italy, like the 4 hour a day, 6 days, I think up to Saturday, 6 days a week, was really quite solid work. And so we learned quite a lot. We did the works, we did the math, we did the history. We studied all the, Dante Alighieri at that time. I mean, this stuff like this you would study there in secondary college. So we were pretty well equipped.
Did you have any neighbours with young kids or kids your age with whom you became friends, or?
Not really, no.
Because again, that was others have said that the way they learned the language is not through the school, but with the local kids.
No, we had no such a thing.
And so they communicated. They learned to communicate with them, and that's the way they picked up the language. But in your case, it's like being thrown into a deep without any
class and survive. Now, if I could say we had next door to us, in those days, I mean, you couldn't say that now. In those days, we used to call the Greeks next door. We had the Triestino across the road. We had the Australian lady next to me. There was an elderly lady who passed away, you know, soon after we knew each other. She actually took my brother and I to see the Graham Kennedy show.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Right. Now, this has been recorded, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay. Maybe you can cut this off. So we were ready to go. This is whatever the day was. And we knew that we were going
to. It'll be fine.
Sorry?
Don't mention names.
No names, no. So we got ready. So we had to catch the bus to go to the city. From the city, we had to catch a tram to go to Channel 9 in Richmond. We hadn't been there. We hadn't done that at all. We had a foreign person that used to take us. We still couldn't communicate. We couldn't say we're like this, we're like that. I couldn't even say I need to go to the toilet. So I needed to do the number 2, right? From the time that I left home to the time that I got back, which was many, many hours, and I held it all in because there was no way that I could explain I need to go to the toilet. We had no idea. How do you explain to someone I want to go to the toilet? We were shy as well, you know. Yeah. So this stuck in my mind, you know, right. Graham Kennedy. Every time I think Graham Kennedy,
it's an interesting story. And you obviously learned the language, and
I basically learned the language. We had, in my case, I started music when I was very little. We had no money to pay for lessons, so I did a few jobs here and there. Raised money at that time to pay for the lessons. Also, I had a private, through acquaintances, recommending someone that would teach us the language, you know, English. Then went to a tech school in Tottenham Technical School for From there, still did some outside studying by paying my way to the studies, you know, we didn't get any free tuition. You had to pay someone to actually teach you. Whereas today, you know, there's always help for migrants. You know, take them out of the classroom and teach them how to survive. But that was a different time for us. So I had to actually pay for my own music. And because I was really passionate, I really worked very hard doing odd jobs in order to do that.
And what ignited the passion for music? You say you started at a very young age. How old were you?
Oh, look, I've always had a passion ever since I was, you know, supposed to be, you know, an infant. You know, like we used to make as kids there, like when we were 6 years old, 7 years old, or even before that, we used to make instruments. We used to make whistles out of grass, a particular grass that was grown in that area. So we would put the little holes there. We would put the mouthpiece into it, you know, from wood. We would shape it in such a way that we could actually play. Fischette, we used to call them fischette. Yeah. And it's a kind of recorder, but it was made from wood. And, you know, you play for a little while and then it just deteriorates, you know, so you make another one the next day. But that's how we used to play. And my grandfather was, this is my mother's mother, he was very musical. He was very artistic. Even his calligraphy in writing was the old-fashioned calligraphy writing, and he was highly educated. You know, he spoke the proper Italian as well as the dialect there, and everything was really spot on and methodical and a perfectionist. And I think that's where my mum and I was sort of, you know. But yeah, he used to play the zampogne.
Oh yeah, the bagpipe.
It was made from sheepskin.
Yeah, the bagpipe.
Yeah, the bagpipe, but the zampogne is like,
yeah. Oh, good. And so that's where you think your musical bent might have.
Yes, but my parents, my mum and dad, in fact, you know, they used to look at me and say, "What do you want to do this for? Yeah, go and get yourself a job." You know, in those days, you had to work.
Yeah.
They still had the old the old methods of, you get to a certain age, you go to work. You don't, no university or anything like that.
No, and I was going to say, it's not, from what you say, your parents didn't encourage your pursuit of the music. They were more interested in you getting financially better.
Yeah, but they had no knowledge in that area.
Yeah.
It was foreign to them. So it wasn't, I don't understand. Why do you want to play music? They couldn't work it out.
And what would you say to them when they said that to you? What did you say to them?
Oh, I think it was more of a drive because I was determined, you could see yourself, doing things that you really enjoy, and it gives you pleasure, and you felt good every time you played something. It really made you feel great. So probably psychological, whether that's just the way that, the mind worked for us.
Yeah.
But not so much. My older brother had no interest whatsoever. The only two, my second brother, my younger brother, and my sister were the only musical ones in the family. In fact, my sister does choir singing, and her and I, we belong into an opera in Melbourne that we play occasionally. I play the piano chord and she sings.
Wow.
It's Emotion Works, which you can probably look it up.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff that we've done.
Yeah. And was the piano accordion the first instrument you learned, or?
Yes, that was the first instrument. Yes.
So you would have played Calabrese to your parents and
well,
and
see, I could do that by ear, but not by music, because I learned fairly formal. The guy that taught me was an Egyptian guy with an Italian mother and a Greek father, so from Cairo. So I didn't have an Italian teacher where they would teach me all this, folk music. So I used to play. They're very happy with that. Yeah. But after a while, they would talk over your playing. The usual thing. It wasn't one of those cases where they sit down and listen to a full performance.
And you ultimately qualified as a music teacher. Is that?
Yes, I've done. Yeah. Well, like I said, I dreamed and breathed music in those days. I got so much involved that music was everything. So I studied the piano accordion, and in addition, I did classical guitar. So at the age of 21, after having got a diploma on piano accordion, not so much the guitar itself, but piano accordion, I got asked to teach, and I've been teaching full time since the age of 21, private lessons.
Yeah, and what about within the education system? Would you teach?
No, it was all specialising in the instrument. That's what I've been doing. No classroom teaching. Although I have done group tuition and conducting ensembles as well as orchestras, but not classroom teaching. That was a different. I did want to. I thought I'd be able to do. I could do it. In fact, they gave me the okay to do studies at the College of Teachers in Melbourne, part of the university at that time. But I didn't take it up because I had to work. So I had no time to be able to study, take time off and do the studies during the day. So I became specialised in piano accordion, guitar, and then I took up the flute later on and became my major instrument. And I've been teaching the flute, for quite a long time in colleges.
What colleges have you been teaching at?
Well, I've been, Melbourne Grammar, St. Columbus, Westbourne, Werribee, all the private ones, Mowbray College.
How long did you teach at Melbourne Grammar?
25 years.
And St. Columban's?
St. Columban's, 10 years.
They're quite different institutions, aren't they? Did you find that?
Different, but see, to us was it's private tuition. So it's you go there as a specialist. You do your work 40 minutes, whatever the amount of time that they allow for the student to come out of class, and you teach them the instrument. And in fact, recently I've had quite a lot of good luck in the sense that some of my students that I had in those days, they've gone to bigger and better things. Some are overseas performing, and we're still in touch with each other. Occasionally they send an email or a recording or a video of them playing, and I feel so proud because, they say, thank you for being part of my life. And you think, oh, yeah, really? You're talking about me? But yeah, so because, in those days, we used to do things with passion, that's all we did, teaching other people skills that you had, and to get a great deal of satisfaction to see someone from not being able to do something to suddenly playing something where you can actually sit back and enjoy what they're playing, which is amazing,
Do you think anyone is ever too old to learn a musical instrument?
Never too old. My youngest student that I've had, which he became pretty proficient on the classic guitar, was 4 years old.
Right.
The mother brought him in, and I thought, oh, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but she insisted, and we got on really well. And of course, this particular student had a lot of what's the word? Respect for someone who would teach him the instrument. Lots of tears every so often, because there are certain difficulties in playing an instrument where you get frustrated. You think, I can't do this. So this is where we come in and encourage them. We can do it. It's like leading them by the hand to walk across the road. You hold it firm enough not to run away, but enough to get them across. So that's the kind of philosophy, sort of.
And how old was your oldest student?
Oh, 60, 70, yeah. I had a guy that used to come all the way from Werribee to Middle Park and used to do piano with me, because I did also piano, electronic organ. I've done quite a lot of it. It really depended on the era, like in the early 70s was piano accordion, then this 80s, the electronic organ with the pedals came into it, then piano, classic guitar. We used to send students to the Australian Music Examination Board, AMEB. I don't know whether you're aware of that. It's part of Melbourne University and University of Australia. And we used to prepare them for exams.
Good.
Yeah.
And do you have children?
Yeah, 2 boys.
Are they musical?
Yes, they are, but they did the wrong thing. I never sort of forced them to pursue to a high degree. They both started on. I used to give them lessons. They played flute, they played piano, even a little bit of guitar. But I thought, now this is something. If you really want to do it, you do it. They say that
they don't have the same passion that you did, obviously, for the.
Well, more in listening. It's not like they don't want to take things hands on. It's too cumbersome. Too much. There's too much, to do. Like to learn a guitar, to press those strings, or the piano accordion to hold it. I mean, why would you want to do that? It's just a different way of thinking these days.
And as well as teaching, did you perform?
Oh yes, I've done a lot of performance. Yeah, been performing.
As a solo or with a group?
I've done a lot of solo playing, like recitals, flute and piano.
Right.
But mostly I've done a lot of piano accordion work with. I developed this orchestra in Victoria, which was called the Accordion Society of Australia Victorian Orchestra. That was the only one at that time. In fact, I don't know whether you come across the name Lou Topano. Have you heard of the?
Yes, I think a lot of people would have heard of Lou Topano.
Yes. Well, in 1976, we did a concert in Melbourne, which probably has never happened ever. He actually came to the concert. We had 104 players on stage from all over Australia, from children, from like teenagers to adults, playing in this big mass piano accordion orchestra at the Melbourne Town Hall. That was probably the peak of my life, because I was responsible to arrange the music at that time, and conducting the orchestra. We had the keyboard as well, percussion, the whole works, but it was all piano accordion. So we played all this classical music, arranged the music, classical music into adopt it into playing with piano accordion. That used to take hours and hours, transcribing music from Mozart, to Bach. So 4-part harmony and all this kind of stuff. So that, and he actually was there, and I remember him coming to me and says, "Look, this has never happened." And in all the years that he's been involved in music himself, piano accordion player, of course, he had his brother in Sydney, Enzo Topano, as an accordionist as well. He recently passed away. So he had never seen anything like this before. But that was a year, 1976. That was a time when, people did practice, like students would practice, and there was a...
And for how long did the orchestra exist?
Oh, this was the National Orchestra. I had the orchestra here myself from the late 60s. Late 70s, I should say. Late 70s to probably 1989.
Right.
Yeah, where we used to meet every Sunday morning and practice in a hall. And we used to perform, and used to do competitions. We used to go to South Street in Ballarat. South Street competitions. I don't know whether you've been aware of that, but that's been one of the places that people used to perform. We did recordings as well. We did quite a lot.
And why did it disband in 1989?
Oh, look, I think after many years, it got to the point where Gaetano he does the orchestra. I mean, I got to a point where I thought, I got married at the age of 38, I had a new wife, and I thought, every Sunday morning I had to get up and, arrange the music, write the music, and it was quite, it takes a lot of your time. So I thought I'll give it to someone else. Someone else took it over, lasted for a period of time. So that was an era, Vince. And then we also, this is another interesting point. We also had a quintet called Sinfonietta 5.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the players that were there, the players that were in there was Robertino. I don't know whether you've heard of him, or Joe Roberto.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a jazz pianist. One of my friends, Ian Southwood, another lady who's now a teacher in Abu Dhabi, Aurora Muratti.
Mm-hmm.
She was one of the well-known musicians in Melbourne and did a lot of TV stuff. In those days, there were kids, and they used to perform on television, winning competitions. And another guy who's Anthony Schultz, is from another orchestra. We had this quintet for a little while. We did recordings. We played Bach and recorded those works. But again, it lasted for a period of time, and of course, like everything else, people are busy, and unfortunately, just disappears. But we have great memories when we meet each other. We always talk about the good times.
Yeah.
They were amazing times, Vince.
So, and at the moment, you're still teaching, but you're not performing that much, or are you still
well, I do. We've got this opera that my sister and I are in. It's called Emotion Works. It's modern opera, so I usually play the accordion according to the operas that they do, but it's more modern kind of stuff. So recently we did one which was a couple of operas. I just can't think of the name on top of my head, where I played the piano accordion into French music. So that was really quite good to be involved at this particular time. So we're still sort of in touch, but with this COVID now, we don't know where we are going.
Yeah.
The next 12 months or 2 years or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's Emotion Works.
Yeah. Now, in relation to your passion for cooking, what gave rise to that part of your life?
Well, that's really quite interesting. When I turned 50, I almost got burnt out because, I thought there must be something more to life. You get to a peak where you had a journey. You got to this point. Now, right, I'm here now. Where am I now? And where have I been? And where am I going tomorrow? So I've always had this passion about food. So I decided to do a chef course at Melbourne Polytechnic.
Mm.
Now, there we had two great Italian chefs, one a chef, and like a normal chef, and the other one was a specialist in patisserie. You know, the patisserie chefs are a little bit different to normal chef because everything is done with measurements. So pastry is an incredible. It's a scientific course. So I was so impressed in the things because it was something new. It's like I've come out of jail and I'm going to something that I love cooking. You know, I've been cooking all my life. So I wanted to know how the commercial cooking styles are, you know, like how to fry an egg and all this kind of, we used to do butchery and all this kind of stuff. So that course for about probably over 12 months. So we had to work in the kitchen. The last part of it was working in the kitchen for 6 weeks, and each week had a designated task. Like one would do, say, entrees, the other one would do baking, the other one would do, I don't know, meats or whatever. So we all had to take it in turns. And I was really so, enthusiastic and wow, the pressure was just unbelievable. So this guy, I won't mention any names now, but this guy really stood out. One of the teachers. So many years went by and we hadn't seen each other. So every time I used to come across a chef, I used to say, excuse me, do you know such and such a person? No, I haven't, whatever. So this one time, until my wife's brother-in-law, nephew, I asked him, he's a chef. He said, oh, yes. Oh, I got his phone number. He taught me patisserie. So I got hold of him, and he was so impressed that I looked him up after so many years. So we have become very good friends. And I did another course. They invited me to do another course at Melbourne Polytechnic, which is certificate through chef patisserie. So because of that, I've developed this thing about making things, like creating things. So you're looking up recipes that are traditional, especially Italian, although I can do other kind of stuff, a bit of Asian and all that. Because my wife is Anglo-Indian, my kids, we like a lot of Asian food. We go overseas, we go to Japan and places like Malaysia and Vietnam. So we're very much into that kind of style of food. So nothing sort of puts us off. So I've been making, for the last few months, I've been making biscuits for our friend here, Donato, who's got Taco and Tosca, because they had to go on takeaway mode because of the COVID. So I introduced to them making biscuits for clients that come in and order their coffee. And we made a batch and it went. We made another batch and it went. So we got a few different style of biscuits. And I go there a couple of times a week and just make these biscuits. People queue up outside waiting for the lemon biscotti, limoncello, or the cantucci, So, and also I'm in touch with the pastry chef. We do a few things together. He's my mentor. I've been helping him making videos for his classes because of his COVID stuff. So I've been going to Melbourne Polytechnic, making videos of his recipes for students. And so that's the current form of what I'm doing at the moment.
You said that you've been cooking all your life. I take it that you were cooking before you did the course. Is that?
Oh, definitely. Well, like I said to you earlier, when we came to Australia, both my parents were working shift work, and I was the only one home. And I had a young baby sister, a younger brother. Not so much my older brother was pretty self-sufficient. He's 2 years older than I am, but someone had to do the cooking for them, So yeah, we used to cook all the traditional Calabrese stuff, the stuff that we used to eat in Italy.
And is that they dishes that you learned from your mother, or did you just recollect from your life in Italy?
I think a combination of both. Even in Italy, we used to, we were always making things like, making olives, curing olives and salamis for that matter. We used to slaughter the pig in those days. And to us, to see a pig being slaughtered for human consumption, it wasn't a big deal. I mean, now I would probably look at it and think, what a cruel thing. But see, we grew up in that area. You know, we had all the seasons, those beautiful seasons. We had, you know, the season for the tomatoes. We had the season for the olives. We had the season for the chestnuts, salamis. They were amazing time because that's what we looked at. We looked at, this is winter now, salami time. So how they used to make it in those days, they used to help each other. You would grow your own pig, you know, from a little piglet, and you fatten them up. You get to a point where, unfortunately, it gets slaughtered, and all the parts of the pig was used, and you would get the next door neighbours to come and help you, and then you go and help the other neighbours. So it was always around that area there, you know, helping. I used to always help the ladies because I used to get on with the you know, being a kid, you know, they used to say, "Get down to bed, come here," you know. So I used to hang around. You know, the men were, you know, knives and, you know, one side, and the women were doing all the cooking, you know, with their apron on and making the sauce for from the meat that was being cut for the pasta, and they were all pause and all together. You get meat together on this big table, and the wine, the homemade wine, all this kind of stuff. Yeah, it was amazing.
You mentioned your mother worked also. What sort of work did your mother do?
My mother did factory work in the early stages, but then I think she might have gone. She went to a place called Campari in the city.
Yeah.
And somehow, I don't know, she got this job, but she actually became very well known woman. She was there for 15 years and very highly respected. And I think she brought a lot of knowledge and joy to the place because she was a woman that once you meet her, it was infectious. To me, I usually say that she was a mum, but she was also a friend. And we used to talk to each other as if we were brother and sister. There was no yes, mum kind of thing. You know, we used to say each other things, but we did a lot of things together. We used to make salamis. None of the families were involved. It was just her and I. And yeah, that was amazing. So anyway, she was there for 15 years. So.
Did she cook at the restaurant, or was she?
Yeah, she did cooking. She was front of house as well, making coffees, helping out with the pastry, you know, all the stuff. You know, they had a pastry chef at that time, and used to do all the cleaning as well. They used to do all sorts of tasks. But a lot of chefs, they used to talk about mum. You know, this is what our dinner has been doing this week. She showed us this particular recipe, Calabrese. Not that they would do it, but, you know, influence them in old traditional methods and the type of verdura, for instance, you know, that wasn't heard of. You know, the Northern Italians, they have got their own style of food.
Well, yeah, that is the interesting thing, isn't it? Even in salami making, there's variation from region to region within Italy, from what I've perceived. In your view, what makes the Calabrese salami so unique?
Well, look, first of all, I'll tell you how the early stages I had no interest because, like I said, I was very heavily involved with my music and teaching and studying. My parents used to make their wine, used to make their salamis and other things, the olives and all that. But I never used to really take part in that because it was too much. It was really too much to take, you know, to be involved in salami making. In fact, one day I said, why do you want a salami where you can actually go into the store, to a supermarket and get your salami already made? And my father said to me once, he said it in English. He said, one day you see. I thought, oh yeah, one day I'll see. Yeah, of course, yeah. He passed away, and in 1994. So my mother obviously forgot about making salamis, wine. They've got grapevines in their backyard. She just quit. She didn't do anything that they used to do together. So I went to her place one day, and she didn't look really happy at all. She looked really a little bit depressed or whatever. So it was winter, and I thought, let's apply a little bit of psychology here. I looked at her straight in the eyes and I said, Mum, I said, guess what? We're going to make salamis. Well, to her, no more pain. Her eyes become large. My God, salamis. And you know something she already knew? Because she said, I'm about to go and buy the meat. And she said to me, I've got $200 in the little jar there, saved for that. And that was it.
Yeah.
So then we used to do the salamis together. And until one day, my older son, who's 26, he said, Dad, your salamis taste really good, you know. Why don't you put them into the Melbourne Salami Festival? The Melbourne, you know of that, the Melbourne Salami Festival? Yeah. That was in 2014. So I said, nah. I said, well, you know, what do you want to do that for? So he actually put the form in. Then they got in touch with me. Yeah, send us the salami. So, you know, so I had to send him the salami for sampling. And so we went to the festival and we actually came second.
Oh, congratulations. Well,
from about 100, I don't know, so I had 100 applicants. And the year after, I think we came fourth.
Oh.
So because of that, the Melbourne Salami Festa, they engaged the guy that won first and myself second. He and I, we did quite a number of salami masterclasses for the Melbourne Salami Festa, where they had a makeshift room at Northcote Town Hall, one of those ship containers, turned into a room with, you know, like a proper room there, where we actually, the other guy, he's a master butcher, although Australian by nationality. He trained with Italians, the prosciutto makers in Melbourne. You know, he gave me the name. I'm talking about from years ago. They're no longer there. They used to make all the prosciutto and the salamis, and apparently he was the apprentice for many years. So he knew exactly how to slaughter the pig. So we had half a pig dead. He would slaughter that for the class. He would cut all the different parts. And we did that number of about 15 or 16 classes.
It's interesting that you said that in your youth and even in your teenage years, you weren't interested in any of these traditions or customs. Is that because you felt that you had to fit into the wider Australian community, or you didn't feel that inclination?
No, Vince, I have to say no, not so. It's just that I was too heavily involved. You know, almost like a horse with two things on the side here. You know, looking at one track, way of thinking, and it's music. Because, you know, I wasn't married, I was a bachelor, and all we did was just play. We had students and we're preparing for exams. The last thing you want is to go out there and make salamis when you're really tired, you know, like, oh, not salami again. But that's when it originally started, when my mother wasn't feeling good and we started making the salami. So from there onwards, from that particular point onwards, we used to really look forward to making the salamis, but she was never for competition. She said, no, why do you want to, you know, show people this stuff? This is our salami. But I thought, Mom, because I'm one of these types that if you got the good, there's a saying, it pays to advertise, providing you got the goods.
Yeah.
So we had the goods. I mean, you taste the salamis, they're amazing. So why wouldn't you share it with Vin and Sam out, you know?
Was that to your parents' recipe, or was it just?
Look, it was. Look, I'm going to tell you straight. It was a combination of both. The format is the Calabrese. I know, you know, we used to put in chili, salt, pepper. I should say white pepper, black pepper, whatever it is, red pepper, and fennel. They're the four things that goes for the Calabria. When you talk about salami Calabria, that's a Calabrian salami. Then, of course, you've got the duya, which is another side, which we can talk about it as well. So, because at that, see, I've always been a methodical person with, you know, everything's got to be you know, 10 grams or 20 grams. I'm not one that says, let's put a handful of this and a handful of that. This was my mother, right? So because my mother I was fast at it. She couldn't mix and all that. So she would prepare all the stuff, like all the red capsicum, the fennel seed was all from the garden. The capsicum were grown in the garden. She would actually dry them, roast them in the oven and turn them into a fine powder. The chilies all homegrown, and then there was a portion. So the salt, they had no idea about the salt content. And this is where it's quite interesting, because a lot of times the salami makers, the families used to make salamis, and they used to say, my salamis didn't come out good this year. You know, that was the common thing. The other guy would say, oh, mine was superb. And they would blame the pig got fed the wrong food or something, right? But nothing to do with them doing it wrong.
No.
Until I realized that they used to put a handful of salt, right? Mix it. Then another handful of salt. It's not salt enough. So probably the amount of salt, they would say, no, that's too salty, you know, and they would stop there. So there is a method, but a method that was played, it's like playing music by ear, you know, like it's okay, but it's not quite Bach, you know. Bach had it all calculated methodically, you know, like math. But this is a handful of this and a handful of that, which is all right. But then if you want to ferment something, it's not, you've got to be careful, because you can poison someone, you know. I don't know of anyone who actually died from eating a salami, you know. But of course, then you would learn that when you cut a salami, you see what the quality, if the smell is not good, or it looks green, obviously you don't eat it. Well, so that's okay, it's safe. And so what my mum used to do is to say, look, let's put a handful of this and a handful of that. The only thing that I did for her was to put the 3% salt, all right, which is 30 grams per kilo, you know, in order to give you that, the ocean salinity, because that's how the microbes go into the ocean, is the salinity of the ocean that makes life into the ocean. It's the salt in the water. So I can see where the theory comes from, you know, but for them it was just a handful of that. But to overcome, to get her recipe, I used to say, Mum, chuck the handful here on this piece of paper. And I had the scale, and I would weigh everything, and then I'd record it. So I've got a lot of these recipes. I call them Leondina salami, number 2, number 3, and the date and all that. They were the salami of the time that she actually created, that for herself, that I made for her. And I would make my own, with my own system, my own ingredients, and she would say, no, mine are better than yours. And that was the conversation. That's why I said mother and friend.
And now, as I understand it, you belong to the FIC. What is the FIC?
That's the Federazione Italiani Cuochi.
Right.
Yeah.
And what does that do?
That's a Federation of Italian Chefs. It's an Italian body all over the world. And we have the Australian one, you know, where we have a president in New South Wales, and Sandra is the secretary. So you can probably ask him a few questions about the FIC yourself. Every Monday they have a kind of Skype where they go worldwide, and different chefs prepare different dishes, like a pasta or something. So that's something that it's worthwhile, you know, pursuing. FIC, F-I-C.
And I think you're also a member of another association relating to the Calabrese traditions, are you not?
Yes, that's the one that I was telling you about before, which is the... You're going to ask me what the name is. What is it?
What's it called? The Accademia delle Tradizioni Calabrese, is that?
Exactly. Where Sandro Isabella is a Calabrese chef, a great chef indeed. He comes from the same region where I come from.
We've interviewed him, and
right. So we have a lot of things in common, because he actually knows people that are related to us, not through now relationship, but prior. And so we speak the same language. We have the same passion. In fact, I actually met him in Sydney for the first time through someone else at one of the restaurants that he was working at in Easter, and we hit it off really well because we got the same passion. We're talking about duya, making salamis. So he actually came from Sydney, and we made salamis here. Three of us made salamis one particular year. It was last year actually at Taco Tosca restaurant with Donato and Sandra and myself, and we also made the nduja, which it has taken a lot of research, finding out where the nduja comes from.
Explain what is nduja.
Nduja, okay, nduja comes from a place called Spilinga. It's in Calabria, and I think traditionally what they used to do when they used to slaughter the pig, nothing was thrown out. Pieces of fat, a little bit of lean, everything was, we can't throw this out. So what they did, they used to mince it very fine, and used to, put in the salt and all that, and used to put, I think it was about, look, it's supposed to consist of 70% fat, 30% lean, and about 30% chili. That's the Calabrese chili. So
very spicy.
Very spicy. So all over the world, they know the nduja as Calabrese nduja. There's no other, no one can copy that because it's been what's the tradition at DOP? D-O-P?
D-O-C.
Isn't it DOP? D-O-P?
You might be right.
It could be D-O. Sorry about that. It's the registration for that region, whatever. Yeah. That makes sense.
I understand. And what, in terms of the association, what are the Calabrese traditions that you feel warrant being preserved? The association is
in I think it's in the region we mentioned before. Comes from your region.
In Viv.
Viv, around that area, that's where the Calabrese chili is being grown for, which is world famous. Anyway, that around pizza around that area.
Right.
Yeah. So because of the chili and basically because of the chili, I would say they put chili in almost everything. You got to have chili, and of course they preserve other things like eggplants and all this other stuff, artichokes. The olives, of course. They use other methods than their methods are fairly traditional compared to, say, other regions of Italy. Just basically this food, the vegetables that they, you can actually walk into a field even here, but there we'll walk into the forest and we will find stuff that we could eat. It's not, here you have to go to the market. We're there's plenty of food everywhere. You go out there.
Why do you feel that these traditions are worth preserving? Well,
look, once these things are not, if you don't point out to a young person these days that, you go to a field, an open field here, and say, see this little plant here? They look and say, yeah, it's a bit of weed or something. Well, hang on. Now, this has got certain vitamins. People have been eating this plant for centuries. Mm. So they need to know that we mustn't stop and say, move on and forget about the past. It's like, someone studying history, I mean, we're still, it's almost essential to study where we came from, who made us, where, those traditions, how long have they been around? Mm. Why salt? Why salt into meat? Why did they had to preserve meat in those days? They had no refrigeration. So they had these methods that were very basics and they worked perfectly because you could actually, you either have a traditional, seasonal, where you have the tomato seasonally, or you can conserve those tomatoes. You make your sauce or you can put them into, make your sauce and have your pasta all year round, So you either have it for the at the time of the season or past the season where you've got no choice.
Yeah.
Like the Scalise,
And is the association Australian based, or was it founded in Italy?
I think it's founded in Italy. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But again, as I said, look, this is a relatively new thing for us, and we really haven't had much of a chance to really discuss what can we do to sort of, enhance the organization. But we all think along the same lines, So people that are in this organization, they all have the same kind of.
Is membership open to anybody, or?
Sorry?
Membership of the association, is it open to anybody, or?
Yes. Well, it's at the moment you just you can log onto Facebook and become a member that way. But I think there's a future there where there might be numeration or some sort. I can't say that. I can't describe that until you really speak to Sandra, because he's the one who actually started the whole thing going here in Australia, as far as I know. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. And Sandra has promised to put on a cooking demonstration for us, but he's very busy at the moment. Now that you mentioned that he and you made salami, maybe when the salami season comes, we can organise an event where you and he can demonstrate to others who are interested how the process actually works.
Yeah, very happy to do that. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Well, look, thanks very much, Gaetano. It's been a pleasure hearing about your experiences, which I think is in some ways it's very unique, and I hope
a little difference.
It highlights the variety within the Calabrese community. Thank you very much.
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
Ciao.
Fantastic. All right. Ci vediamo.